Welcome back everybody to another in my time-lapse model build videos, and in this video it's kind of episode 3 of 3 of my A-26 Invader time-lapse series where I'm building all 3 of my kits. And if you haven't seen the other 2 kits already, I'll link one of them up in the corner here so you can go back and see those. And then the other one will link to the other one and you'll be able to see everything, so it all works out. But that being said, this video we're going to be looking at the building of the Monogram A-26C. This is the original boxing that they came out, I want to say it was 1993 when this kit was released, so relatively late in the Monogram series. And it was interesting, it was a kit I always wanted to build as a kid, but never got around to build before. So in my 30 odd years of building models, this will actually be the first A-26 I've ever built in any scale. So it's pretty exciting. But before we get too far into this, my name is Sean and this is Sean's Aviation. Just before we actually jump into the video, I want to say thank you for everyone out there who is watching this. I appreciate everybody who does come over and take the time to check out my channel. If you do like what you're watching and you want to see more, down below, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That notification bell will let you guys know when new content comes out on this channel. I try to release something, usually about 4 or 5 videos a month, depending on how much free time I have and how much content I have ready to go. And then every time somebody likes a video, it helps the algorithm push the videos out to more people who might be interested in this. So all of that is greatly appreciated if you feel so inclined. If you also feel inclined to help out on this channel in a bit of a monetary way, I always mess up those words. Down below in the description, you'll see a link to my coffee account. And I always have a coffee here. I'll take a sip before it gets too cold. I almost always have a coffee down here while I'm doing something. And any little bit you guys can help out does help offset some of the costs I incur with this channel. But please don't feel like I'm begging for money. There's no obligation at all. I am just doing what I love to do, and I'm taking you all along for the ride while I do it. So that being said, let's jump right into this video, and I will introduce this build. So as I said, it is the Monogram A-26C Invader. It is their original release from 1993. It does have all the flaws of an early Monogram kit, raised detail, softer details inside. Shape apparently is a little off. I haven't done the research too in depth to figure that out, but that's where it stands. Now I do plan to build it out of the box using the kit decals, and I can't remember which version I decide to build. I think it's actually this one. This particular box art one. It's the same aircraft that is currently on display in the USAF, the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. So I'm going to be building it up as that, and pretty much straight out of the box, I'm going to do, especially this black scheme, I'm going to be trying to do a little bit of weathering on it, try to make it look, a little used and abused, and black is a very hard color to get right, so I'm very, very interested to get into this and make it look cool. I'm going to do a bit of paint chipping, as you see on this. I'm really going to try to make this look interesting, so we'll see how well I can pull it off and what I can do. But yeah, let's jump right into this, and you guys can actually watch me take care of this, this build. As usual with these aircraft models, I do start building this with the cockpit, get it all prepped and ready to go. It's a bit difficult because it's got the black plastic. It affects the colors a little bit, so there's a bit more prep work needed in order to ensure your colors have good saturation. So quick update here while I'm working. Something I've been meaning to try for a while but never really got around to. Super glue, especially, this is gap filling medium super glue. So when you get a big gap, like you see in, I'll zoom in here a bit so you can get a better look at what I'm talking about. If you look at the gap I have around the edge of this door, it's a significantly wide gap. And if you put putty in there, there's no strength to it. It just kind of floats in that opening. It takes a lot to fill it up, and you end up having to mess around with it a lot afterwards. So in this one, I've already done a little bit with some super glue just to tack it into place. Now, there's a trick I've heard a few times. I've seen people try it. I've never tried it myself, and that's using baking soda to strengthen a super glue joint. You basically sprinkle the baking soda on the super glue, and it's supposed to basically instantly cure the super glue as well as make it a stronger bond. So I'm gonna try it for the first time right here on this video. So I'm not gonna go too much. I don't want to like have all the glue kind of like seep out the bottom, but I'm just gonna cover the opening as much as I can. Doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be enough that it's going to hold it in place. Something like that, and then apparently all you have to do is just sprinkle the baking soda onto the super glue. And this is supposed to, from what I understand, it basically instantly causes the super glue to cure. And it makes the super glue extremely strong. It's supposed to be somewhat like concrete when it solidifies. So it actually gives it, it's something with the molecular structure. It causes it to form a very strong bond. Like I said, I've heard it akin to the strength of concrete, the way it works. So that's all. I'm just going to fill these spaces with super glue, and then, if it works as advertised, these gaps and seams should be unbelievably strong. And then it should only require a tiny little bit of sanding at the end in order to get the gaps to be filled. Basically, I'll sand it as it is, hit it with a little bit of primer, see how it looks in terms of gaps, you know, putty as needed, and then go through afterwards and clean it up. This is the worst. This gap is massive. I might have to come through 2 or 3 times to get this one filled. Second, especially with a gap as wide as this, we'll really get a feel for how good this works. So my plan, I'm going to leave this as it is for a while. Make sure it solidifies up quite nicely, that it sets, and I'll come back and just dump that back into the container, whatever's loose, and then we'll see how it looks. A little bit of sanding on the outside, and we'll get a good feel for whether this works or not. So that's it. I'm not going to make a full-blown tips and tricks video on this. This is literally just a little insert for your own knowledge. If it does work really well in the future, I might do a quick little tips and tricks video, or just include it in something, or just leave it as this, and you guys get to learn something if you watch this video. And if you haven't watched this video, you'll have to figure it out somewhere else. I don't know where I'm going with that yet. We'll see. But anyways, that is a little bit of how I want to work with that. So we'll see here. For me, it's going to be a couple hours. For you, it's going to be like an instantaneous second. You'll see how this turned out. So let's see. So here we are. This has been sitting for a couple hours now. So I'm just going to take it. Now, this is the first time I've done this, so don't even know if what I'm doing will work. But yeah, that really did seem to work. So it's definitely got, oh yeah, that's filled that gap in quite nicely, and it's nice and hard. super, super hard. So I'm going to dump out all of the excess baking soda. Get to reuse all the stuff I didn't use. Yeah, it's definitely got a nice solid sorry, thinking two things at once. Now the glue is definitely solidified up nicely. It's super strong. It's filled those gaps nicely. It's given me a good base to work on. A little bit of putty will definitely clean a lot of that up, and it's not super deep. It's just a nice kind of surface. The seams are only surface deep. Now I will have to do a bit more down the middle. There's a bit of a gap, so once I glue these together, I'll have to go down and do the same thing down the middle again. But that's definitely a technique that I can stash away and use going forward. That works amazingly well. It's going to be really good. I have a conversion I put off just because trying to get it all to mount properly together is going to be a pain in the ass. A Lancaster conversion to a Lincoln, a Ford Lincoln, an Avro Lincoln, and trying to figure out how to get the pieces to glue together. I've always been wondering how to make them strong. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it, and it's going to go together super nice. So that's going to make life a lot easier for me. I think my next step, I'm going to get these cowls glued together, get the center seam super glued, do the same thing, sprinkle the baking soda down the middle, get that up, and all this needs in is just a quick hit with the sandpaper, and you'll never even notice it. So I think another technique in the books. So let's just keep on rolling.
And you can see here, once I get the interior green painted, I go ahead and start picking out some of the interior details in black and silver and red and whatnot. And apologies for staring at the back of my head. A bit of a problem when you're trying to do some detail painting with the overhead camera. So I've been plugging away on this kit, working on the interior colors, getting ready to get the fuselage assembled. And I just want to take a moment to just really show everybody what an amazing kit this is. I've read a lot of issues with this. Shape is wrong. This, you know, blah, 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 too flat, too flat here, too wide there, whatever, what have you. This kit is really amazing, considering it is a Monogram kit from 1993. It's a 30-year-old mold. Now, I don't really know the A-26 enough to say yay or nay, these shape issues exist. But if I take the brand new ICM counter Invader, B-26K, and this is the Monogram A-26C, and I put them together. Now, the pins are they're opposite, so I'm doing pin to pin, so I can't really hold it together very well. But if I line up the cockpit opening here somewhat, I mean, this is going to be hard because it's not the best. I can't hold it together. Now, line up the front edge of that cockpit. The back edge is a little farther back, sure. You know, the canopy might be slightly longer. The wheel wells line up like almost perfectly. If I put the wheel wells together, if I line that, oh my God, this is not easy. If I hold the wheel wells to the same point, they are, you know, within, I want to say, a mil of each other, of the right size, the same size. You know, that means, you know, if it's less than a millimeter, even at 1 millimeter on a 1/48 scale, that's 4.8 centimeters. That's 2-inch difference in the wheel well opening. 2 inches is not very much in the grand scheme of things. Cockpit lines up almost the same. You look down the shape. I don't actually see a difference in the shape on these kits. I really don't. I mean, maybe this one is a little flatter in profile on the side, and this one has a little bit of a bulge to it. But it's so minor that, you know, reading some of the online reviews of this, oh, the shape is all wrong on the Monogram kit, blah, blah, blah. I don't see it. I don't see a significant issue that you would be like, you know, oh yeah, it's wrong. You'd have to get down with the calipers and really measure it and look at plans and hope the plans you're looking at are right. It's amazing. Like look at this interior detail. You know, this is 30-year-old, for the most part, hand-tooled detail. All I've glued onto this have been the bomb racks. All this other detail is molded into the side of the fuselage. And this is just a simple interior green, a black wash, some basic detail painting, and some dry brushing. There's not much into it. What you're looking at right here, for the most part, could be done in 1 day. 1 day's worth of work. I've done it over a couple because I don't have as much time to sit down and I'm working on 4 kits at once. But this is easily achievable within a day. Paint the green, do some detail painting, couple hours. Black wash, let it dry, couple hours. Dry brushing. That's it. The detail in this thing is astounding. You know, you would think you're looking at something that was significantly more expensive. And when you get it into a kit and it's all buttoned up, now this is a little soft. I'm not going to argue the point that this is a little soft. I got to touch up the green on the back, I think. I think I'm going to be able to see that. But this is a little soft. You know, a modern kit, this would look a lot better. That I'm not going to argue. But for what it is and for what you're going to see, it ain't too bad. Bottom of the turret. Doesn't look bad. Again, it's going to be flat coated. You'll lose all of that. The bulkheads. I mean, look at That is all molded on detail. None of that is a separate piece. This is one single piece of molded plastic. And as far as I know, Monogram was hand tooling their kits. There was no 3D CAD and CNC machined molds in '93. This was all, as far as I know, hand tooled. And it looks amazing. So for anybody out there who may be looking at these older Monogram kits and kind of poo-pooing them and being like, oh, wow, I mean, ICM's out. It's a better kit. These, that Monogram kit's, 30 years old. ICM is new. Let's spend the money on a new kit. ICM is going to run you north of $100 Canadian. You can get these for 40. At the hobby shop, they go for 40 used. You find a private seller, you might be able to get one of these for, $20, $30. I mean, I am very pleasantly surprised at the detail and how nice these kits look. I mean, I have to hold it because it's not going to hold itself. But you do that. I mean, you look at inside of let me get some light. Oh, sorry. There. You look up inside. If this is what you're going to see looking through tiny little windows, and that's the level of detail you're going to see, yeah, this kit's great. Anyways, that was my little internet modelers review rant, because like I said, all I've ever read were bad things about this kit, and I am very, very happy with this. I mean, like I said, you start plugging some of these parts. That's the back one. That's the front one. That goes in like that. That goes in like that. That fits in like... Yeah, it fits in like that. That fits in like that. I'm not sure how much of this you can actually see right now. But I mean, you're getting a decent looking kit out of that. The instrument panel. Didn't even show you the instrument panel yet. This is how the instrument panel turns out. That's not bad. We're talking, Tamiya level of detail on this thing at this point. This is equivalent to what you would expect out of the 1/48 scale Tamiya P51s. You're not getting much extra detail out of this. Yeah, anyways, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'm just rambling at this point, and I'm very angry at all of the reviews I have read online and all of the, what's how the A26 is. Don't buy them. They're wrong. The shape is wrong, and this and that, and anyways, buy for what you enjoy and what you want. Don't buy based off of what other people say. Now, just because I know some people might be like, oh, you're repeating yourself, I'm going to do this exact same bit for the other Monogram A26 to go in that episode's time lapse. And you might even see this in one of my next What's on My Desk weekly updates, because this is a bit of a rant and I'm going to continue with it. So, anyways, interior is basically done. It needs a flat coat. And I'm going to start assembling these fuselages and getting to the next step. So, stay tuned for that. Okay, so here we are working on the bombs. They're not perfect. This one has a pretty bad step on it. I thought I fixed all those, but either way, I can stick that in, you know, away. Anyways, the yellow has been painted. Now these bombs have yellow stripes, similar to most bombs. So what I've done is I've pre-painted the yellow. I'm gonna go ahead with the, I've got this, I want to say this is Tamiya. It's kind of like a vinyl tape. It's got a bit of stretch to it, so you can stick it on, and then as you apply it, you can kind of stretch it, and it fits. It's actually not the best. Not quite doing what I want it to do here. I might have to give it some more stretch to get it to conform properly. Basically, this is too small of a radius for this thickness of tape. So it's kind of doing some wonky things on me. But basically, that's the idea. I might just have to use some strips of Tamiya tape. At least I'll use it on the back side. It should fit around the back without any issue. I'm probably just gonna have to cut some really thin strips of yellow Tamiya tape for the front. I think this is just a hair too wide to comfortably make it around. But anyways, I've pre-painted the yellow areas. I'm gonna mask off the stripes, and then when I paint the bomb itself green, I can peel off this masking after the fact, and it'll be masked. Apologies, I yet again am dealing with another cold, the joys of having young kids. But you get the idea. When this gets mounted, kind of like that, right? You can see here I got the bomb with the yellow stripes. Yellow is always a very difficult color to paint. It's very translucent. I have yet to find a good yellow paint that isn't translucent in any way. So you usually run into issues with trying to get it a solid color density. So pre-painting this yellow and then masking the stripes like this ensures that it'll be a nice bright yellow. Like I said, I'm not worried too much about this. You look at historic pictures, and in a lot of cases, this kind of stuff was pretty crudely painted onto the bombs. They weren't really going for, you know, clean, perfect lines when they were doing this. This stuff was, in some cases, just hastily painted on with a brush. So I'm trying my best to make it look good, but I'm not terribly worried if things are just a little bit off, especially at this scale. You know, you're not going to really notice much if it's off a little bit. But either way, like I said, I'm going to try use this white tape for the back half, and then I'll cut up some strips of the yellow, standard yellow Tamiya tape, and I will use that for the nose. It's just, like I said, just slightly thin. The diameter is just a little bit narrower, and the tape is bunching on me, so we'll do this. Probably jump to a time lapse. I'll get these done. We'll get them painted green. And then there's some silver I gotta paint on them, or aluminum, whatever color it is. And then these can be mounted inside the bomb bay. Basically, I was getting ready to assemble the fuselage, basically. I'm at the point now where I'm like, hey, everything's painted, everything's weathered, everything's flat coated. I can probably start assembling these fuselages and get stuff done. And then I took a quick look at the instructions to make sure I didn't miss anything, and realized, yeah, I forgot the bombs. The B model one, the other the other A26 I'm doing, the other Revell Monogram one that's going to have the bomb bay doors closed, you know, I could probably start assembling that one because I don't have to worry about bombs, but I figured might as well get started. No point like the present to get this done. Put it off too long and I just won't do it. But yeah, so we're almost done here, and then I'll start cutting up the Tamiya tape into strips, and then we'll get that done around the front, and then we'll get these painted green, get them in, get the fuselage assembled, and move right along. So yeah, just jump to the time lapse and we'll get this done. So I'm going to deviate slightly from the instructions at this point. This particular kit, the glass-nosed A model, C model. The glass-nosed C model A26, as it comes in the kit, does not include underwing rockets. All they include is this underwing bomb and the underwing gun packs. However, the model I want to build, the version that I'm doing, which is actually the kit instructions, kit version here, this one here, Dream Girl, which is the aircraft, I'm sure I've mentioned it before, that is in the United States, the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. This aircraft is there. It would have had rockets under the wing while it was used in Korea, but this kit, as I said, does not come with rockets. That being said, the gun-nosed B model, which I am also currently building, keep an eye out for the videos for that one, has the rockets included. So I'm going to transplant the rockets from the B model onto this C model and make it work. Now the good news is, doing the research for that, the wings in this kit do include provisions for the rockets. So clearly they were planning to eventually have this option included, they just never actually got around to doing it. So the next step that I'm going to do is go ahead and drill out. I hate these. Monogram was brutal for these massive, you know, 1/2 inch wide sprue connections, and they just make it so difficult to take the pieces off the sprues without doing significant damage to the actual part. I don't know why they ever chose to do this, but you can't cut them without doing some kind of chewing out of the plastic involving filling and sanding, and then with raised panel lines. Ugh. Anyways. So the next thing I'm going to do, cut out these pieces, which I've just done, and start working on that. Effectively, there's nothing... Oh, it's a Post-it note. Really? Oh, that's depressing. There's nothing you need to do with the wings other than drill the holes out before I can glue the halves together. So that's what I'm going to do, because then, you know, I'm very, very close to getting wings on this thing. This is a big plane. Anyways, yeah, we're getting there. So next step, drill out the holes for that. I actually very recently purchased a new pin vise. I was having issues with the other one I was using because the back is a cap. All the drill hole pieces are kept in there, drill bits, but as you try to turn it, the cap loosens off and it's annoying. So I picked this up on Amazon for like 13 bucks and it's got this spinny end. So as you hold your hand and drill, you can keep pressure on it and actually drill. So I am going to put this to use for the first time and I'm going to get drilling these holes. So I guess at this point, let's jump over to a time lapse and you can watch me drill a whole bunch of holes in 10 times speed. So here we go. And here you can see I get the wings assembled and I get the nacelles installed, and then a bit of putty and sand. You'll see I come back to these nacelles and wing joints quite a bit over the course of this video. The fit wasn't the greatest, so there was quite a bit of work, especially in this case that I glued the doors shut. There's quite a bit of work getting everything, all the seams cleaned up and everything looking more or less straight and level. So a bit of work, but at the end it looks really good. So just as we proceed with this, we've got the last little bit of putty in these cowling areas. That should be the end of it in there. The only problem is I've got these really massive gaps underneath where the cowling meets the wing. And it's a little hard to get in there and putty and sand and not lose a lot of the surrounding detail. So what I'm going to do is just use some white glue. I'm going to use a brush, just regular old, you know, this is Elmer's school grade white glue, nothing fancy. You're going to get lots of it. You're going to jam it all down in that little crack as far as you can go. Make sure it is, you don't want it just a surface kind of like cover. You want the glue to be pushed down in there to fill up as much of it as it can. And then you're going to take a Q-tip, a bit of water. You don't want it sopping wet. You want it just damp. And you're going to use the Q-tip just to pull off the excess glue off of the plastic surface. You can use it to clean up any excess around. And that's going to ensure that that crack gets filled up. That glue is going to dry more or less clear. And you can paint over it. You can't sand over it. If you try to sand it, it's just going to peel off all that liquid glue off the surface. So you're best to get as much of the excess off right now. But when that dries and when you paint over it after the fact, you're basically not even going to be able to tell. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It's not a cure-all. It's not a magic, you know, solution. But it definitely fills in a lot of it and makes it a lot less noticeable. And there's a lot less work involved than constant puttying and sanding and scraping off surface detail and then trying to restore detail after the fact. If it's an engraved detail, it's not so hard. Use putty, sand, and then re-scribe, re-engrave. When it's surface detail like this, it's a little bit harder to restore a positive detail. So I just use this process here. Wipe off as much of that excess as you can on either side. And what you're left with is a relatively easy filled crack. And you can do multiple passes. I can hit this with a bit of paint. If I don't like it, do a little bit more with a little bit more paint on top, and it will progressively solve the problem without having to do tons of sanding and wasting of space. It is a little hard. It gets a little hard to see if it actually is in there or not because the glue is effectively, translucent. It's white because it's so thick. When you spread it out thin, it almost becomes translucent, and it's very difficult to tell whether you actually have it down inside the crack or not. But like I said, luckily you can do multiple passes. And ensure that it's in there. That's about it. We'll let that dry. And then after I get all of this sanded and I put another coat of primer on there, I'll be able to get the primer down in there and make sure that that seam, for the most part, is covered. So I'll go ahead and get this other wing done, and then we will move on to the next step. Not sure what that is yet, but we're moving forward. And here you can see I start gluing the fuselage together, and as similar with the other kits and pretty much every kit I build, I glue the seams in a bit of a pattern in a progressive work. I start kind of on one end, at the, say for example here at the top at the nose, I start gluing and I work my way down along the spine, making sure that all of the seams are lined up as straight as possible and limiting the amount of putty that's required down the road. And then I just slowly work my way back to the tail, and then I ensure that everything is glued nice and tight. All the seams have good coverage, and there's no misalignments. here you'll see I start working on drilling the holes and getting the aluminum tube installed for the base. As I'll discuss in a little bit here, I did that in order to ensure that I've got some strength and some positive grab when I do mount it to the base. And here I actually start prepping the base, the wooden base and the brass tube, get everything drilled out and get everything cut and ready to go with the right length and everything. So here we are getting close to the point where I am ready to start really doing paint on this thing. You can see I've got a lot of primer done already, but right now I am going to start doing the masking of the canopies. So that's kind of that next step where I need to focus to get ready to do paint. Mask, I got crust, crap on the inside of the canopy. So I'm just gonna have to live with that. But yeah, I'm getting to the point now where I can start. Oof, gotta get some masking tape. Yeah, start masking off these canopies, and then I can hit it with a coat of the interior green, and then I can really get down to the priming, you know, the seam cleanup, make sure I don't have, you know, tons of seams around the kit. If you do want to see kind of my technique for this, I mean, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm just using standard Tamiya tape, masking off the windows, and then using my light here as a backlight so you get some shine through. Just go ahead and trim that tape back. If you want to see some in-depth look at how I do this, I'll link, if I can remember to do it, I will link put up in the corner here, I'll put up a link to my tips and tricks video where I go through this process in a little bit more detail. So take a look there if you do kind of want to see how I do this. I find it's not the hardest part is getting the right angle when you're right-handed. When you got to flip the kit the other way to get it to work. You want to make sure you have a relatively sharp, a very sharp blade. This one's a little dull, but it's good enough for this larger area. If I was doing some really tight corners, I'd want to go with a newer blade. This is a relatively new blade. I put this on not too long ago, so it's good enough for what I'm doing. But you do want to make sure it's sharp. But by all means, if you do want to kind of see this process in a bit more detail, hop over to that tips and tricks video. I go over it in some detail, and you can adopt this. Like I said, I find it's significantly cheaper than buying you know, like the Edward masks and stuff. That can get very expensive across all the kits, and this is effectively the same material. It just takes a little bit of effort to get it done, but you know, I personally find it very soothing, you know, very relaxing to just kind of plug away at it. So yeah, I'm gonna jump to the time lapse here. You guys can pop over, like I said, take a look at that video if you want to see this process in some more detail, and yeah, just enjoy my concentration. So we're getting very close at this point to getting a solid coat of primer on this. And by extension, actually, it'll be the end of this particular video. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it yet, but I do plan on splitting these videos into 2 halves. So part 1 will cover up to the point when this thing is basically primed and ready for paint. And then part 2 will pick up with the final coating process, paint, weathering, decals, you know, everything else after this is primed and ready to go for final paint. So this is getting pretty close. I'm just giving this the quick, more or less a polishing coat. I'm going over everywhere that was sanded with a fine grit. I believe this is 600 grit, fine sandpaper. I don't wet sand, to be honest. Never really found any benefit out of it, but either way, I'm just giving this a quick hit with the fine grit. Make sure that any significant scratches from the sanding process are polished off. The primer will do a good job at hiding a lot of the minor scratches anyway, so this is just a little bit of insurance. These wings I've done a lot of work on up till now, so they're pretty much ready to go. I'm not too terribly worried about these. The big thing is the fuselage. You can see I've done a lot of sanding. This is where a lot of this fine grit will help polish off the scratches and whatnot from the heavier sanding I did. And yeah, very, very close to primer. And then paint. So I'll time lapse this. You guys can watch me go through and sand this. I also have to do a little bit of cleanup around this canopy. Just a little bit. I'm not going to go crazy with it. But yeah, we'll jump to a time lapse. You guys can watch me sand at 10 times speed. And then next I'll do the interior green along the canopy lines. Make sure all the canopy frames, so if you ever see up from inside, you'll see the green. And then coat primer. And then paint. And just quick update here as I'm working along. I've got the engines painted steel. I needed to get these painted so I could get moving on with the painting and the prep work, and I want to have the engines done so I can mask them off and go ahead and paint everything else at the same time. So I went ahead and got that done, and I needed to get the landing gears painted and everything else on the other kits. So those painted steel, they're in here. I will be doing detailed painting on those later, but they are done. So moving right along, fuselage, I've got the bomb bays masked off as you've seen. I went ahead and filled in a bunch of, I got to do some more, the areas around the canopy and whatnot that had gaps. Some of them opened up again. I got to put a bit more white glue on some of those. to seal them up. But other than that, we're pretty much ready to hit it with a good coat of primer, check for seams, get wings glued on, and then we're pretty much ready for paint. So getting close to wrapping up the end of this part 1 of this time-lapse build. So stay tuned. And here you can see I'm getting the wings glued on. I'm also going to be using a little bit of Mr. Surfacer just to go through and fill in some of the smaller lines, make sure that any of the little gaps and whatnot are ready to go for the final coat of primer, which is coming up pretty soon. So here we are, time for an update on this A-26. I'll grab the kit here so you guys can take a look at it, and here is where it currently stands. It is assembled. It is at this point ready for paint. I've done a quick check of a lot of the seams, and for the most part, I am pretty happy with how everything turned out. There's a few spots here and there, but I mean, I can't get it perfect. It is a monogram kit at the end of the day. I am going to have to live with some inaccuracies and some remnants of panel lines. You know, they never really thought of, except for that. Oof, I got to fix that. That wingtip is significantly out of square. They didn't think of everything when they built this kit. This kit wasn't designed for, oof, yeah, that's not good. I never realized how off-center I had this wingtip. Okay, I'm gonna live with that. Like I said, it is a monogram kit. It was not designed to be highly detailed. There are always going to be issues with it at the end of the day. And short of a complete rescribe and sanding, there will always be some minor issues with it. But for my purposes of what I plan to do with this kit, it is at a position where I think I can move on to paint. There are a few minor things that I want to still work on. I almost stabbed myself here. Things like this, you know, the hatch under here. I just need to clean up the panel lines a little bit. Make sure that I continue across the putty line just to keep it looking somewhat realistic. But at the end of the day, it will be mounted to this base. So next stage is going to be paint, and this will be painted in a gloss black scheme. I'm just going to use the standard Vallejo black paint and then gloss coat it to give it that look. That being said, I also need to paint all of the blue. I do have a green. I have the light green color already that I got to worry about. Things like wingtips, part of the nose, part of the tail. Then there's at the top of the tail, and there's also a letter L on the horizontal stab. So I'm going to have to paint some white as a base coat, then paint that green, and then let that dry nice and solid, and then mask that off in order to continue with the overall black. Luckily it's overall black, so it should be pretty easy to get this thing painted in a couple of shots. And then it's gloss coat, and then we move on. But as I've stated a few times, I'm going to be splitting this build into 2 time lapses. So this is actually the end of part 1. If you're watching these relatively early after I release them, it's going to be a bit. It's probably going to be a few weeks, if not months, after I release this video before I get ready. I get the second video complete. It's still going to take some time. It's still going to take some time for me to get everything completed. So stay tuned for that. If you've subscribed, you'll get the notification. If you haven't, you'll just have to keep coming back and check. If you haven't, it's also a good time to do that. So anyways, we're going to hold off on this now. We're going to move over to continue this on into part 2. So stay tuned. We'll see that continue with the paint and final steps.
Thank you for watching, guys, and as always, if you are interested in any of the content you see, you can access my website at www.seans-aviation.com. You can see all the latest pictures of aircraft and museums and the build logs of all of my current models and past models on that site. And if you're interested in any of this content, please click the subscribe button here on YouTube to follow more. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.